In the period of time in which I grew up, the 1950s, all kids were, particularly country kids, we were obsessed by cowboys and Indians. And we had horses, and every afternoon we would play hide and go seek and cowboys and Indians. And so we, in Western movies, of course, would go to, there was no movie theater in my town, but we would go 2 towns away to the movie theater on the weekend and see a John Wayne movie or Gary Cooper. And I mean, it was just fantastic.
This show goes back really to 1979 because our museum had just engaged Richard Avedon to make a portrait of the West. And he hired Laura Wilson to help him scout for people to make his portraits of. So she really cut her artistic teeth working for him. She worked for him for 5 years until the completion of that project and our presentation of it in 1985.
It was a huge influence. His example and his intensity refined the way I saw things. I think I always was interested in people and in photographing people as opposed to the landscape. I'm not a landscape photographer. But then you see also Cartier-Bresson and Robert Capa, and that sort of post-World War II photojournalism was a huge influence as well. And I think that combination, I mean, I was lucky, wasn't I, to be exposed to Richard Avedon, coming out of my interest in World War II photojournalism. So that combination, I think, has kind of heightened the way I see things. And it's really people's faces that interest me, as you can see from these pictures around here. I mean, what's an amazing face is Jim Harrison. I mean, it is really, really a strong picture with great emotion in it. And you see, I don't know what your reaction is, but for me, you see a life of difficulty and hardship and creativity, and it's not necessarily all clear sailing.
She's presenting characters. She's presenting types and cultures. That's really the strength and the heart of her work, to help us see that within this broad space, within that romantic framework that we think of the West as that broad, arid space where one can go out and start over, and if it doesn't work in this place, one will go to another place. Within that romantic framework, she says there's many different communities living their own lives and their own cultures. Sometimes they're violent, sometimes they're beautiful, and she's not trying to make judgments about this, she's merely trying to show you this range of cultures.
My sister lived in London, and she had seen something on Judd. And so she said, you know, you really should go to Marfa and take a look. And right at that time, I was working for the London Sunday Times. And I suggested to the art director, would you be interested in a story on Donald Judd? And they said, oh, yes, of course. And when I first arrived, Donald Judd was very standoffish and ornery, and it made him very difficult to photograph. But that same orneriness made me kind of like him too, and we ended up getting along very well together. He was very focused and interesting, and really a visionary in the way he saw his work in the landscape.
She's interested, has a deep interest in the West. And it's a traditional, romantic kind of West. You don't see Walmart, you don't see McDonald's, you don't see the highways around here, you don't see the cities. She is somebody who's merely trying to put you in her shoes, and that's where the title of the show comes from, That Day. As if you're standing next to her with her camera and watching that interaction.
The one thing that I hope is that people will immediately associate that day that I was on the border in Laredo and photographed the drug smuggling searches, or that day that I was in Fallon, Nevada and photographed the fighter pilots. That's what, of course, I mean by that day.